on to part 3, the Paris Climate Agreement. So the Paris Climate Agreement is a product of the United Nations Convention of Climate Change, or the UNFCCC. United Nations Framework Convention of Climate Change. Sorry, my bad. I forgot to include the framework in there. It was held in Paris in 2015, though, and it was adopted in December 2015. Initially, the Paris Climate Agreement was signed by 195 countries, including the United States. Its main purpose is to strengthen the global response to the threat of climate change by keeping a global temperature rise this century well below 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels, and to pursue efforts to limit the temperature increase even further to 1.5 degrees Celsius. That's a lot. Essentially, their big goal wasn't to solve climate change in one fell swoop. We can't do that. It was to set things up for a prolonged response and a prolonged defense against climate change. And the main goal was to stop global temperature rise from exceeding 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels, although it would be ideal if we could keep it from exceeding 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. Yeah, and one very important thing to note is that this agreement was not entirely legally binding. In the framework of the agreement, it did provide space for countries to wiggle out, and we're going to see a little bit more of that with the US. But it also created space for countries to work together to combat climate change. The Paris Agreement also strives to make environmentally friendly decisions the economic choice, not the moral one. So countries that do not have as much wealth as, say, the US or China, they can still have global support to deal with the impacts of climate change that they suffer. And also to just like promote sustainability in the future. And last but not least, the Paris Agreement seeks to aid developing countries in their attempts to adopt renewable energy and environmentally friendly policies. And the agreement just generally is a structure for countries to work together to have transparency between the countries in our collective efforts to combat climate change, and countries could compare themselves to the standards that the Paris Agreement set. However, Trump declared in 2017 that the US would be withdrawing from the Paris Agreement. And this is just one of like countless Obama-era policies that he has repealed. And Trump said, "I was elected to represent the citizens of Pittsburgh, not Paris." And then the mayor of Pittsburgh was like, we like the Paris Agreement. It's good. We need to stop climate change. I'm paraphrasing, obviously, but he said that the city stood with Paris. And there is a little bit of hope, technically, in the legal wording of the Paris Agreement. The US cannot technically withdraw from the Paris Agreement until November 4th, which is a day after the 2020 elections. So having Biden reelected on November 3rd, 2020 is our best bet to get the US back into the climate agreement or recommitted to the climate agreement after November 4th. Technically, Trump does stay in office and he does retain the presidential power until a couple days into the new year. But 2 months is still a little bit of time, and it's enough time for us to backpedal real fast if he does something that is not good for our US international relations or climate change stance. So how do we stay in the game? There is a collective activist group called We Are Still In that continues to set policies according to the Paris Climate Agreement. Some of its collaborators include former Governor of California, Jerry Brown, and the mayors of several major US cities, including New York City. Yeah. And we also have a climate action tracker, climateactiontracker.org, which maintains up-to-date records on progress regarding climate change globally and by region. So you can check out their website for all that information to stay up to date on what's going on in the world with climate change and climate action. And the most direct way that we can help, again, is to vote. Joe Biden promised that he would not only recommit the U.S. to the Paris Agreement, he would go much farther than that. He's he is the only front-running candidate who is taking an urgent stance on climate action and a return to the Paris Climate Agreement. So that brings me to my last slide, which is our American duty. Our number one American duty as citizens of the United States of America is to vote. Our duty is to fill Congress with representatives to fight for our needs on Capitol Hill, and our needs right now are climate action. So how do we vote? The first step is to register or pre-register to vote. You can register to vote if you are 18 or older, or if you are 16 or 17, you can pre-register to vote too. So then when you turn 18, you don't need to fill out another form again, you're already in the system. The last day to register or pre-register to vote, the last day to register to vote in California is Monday, October 18th. So make sure to register to vote by then. And if you don't know where to register to vote, you can go to turbovote.org, and after you fill out a little bit of information, they'll be able to direct you to your state's election registration form. And then once you're registered to vote, the last thing you need to do is to cast your ballot. On Tuesday, November 3rd, go to the polls or mail in your ballot to vote for Biden, because like I just said, he is the only front-running candidate who has taken an active stance to combat climate change. And if we look at everything that Trump has done regarding climate change and environmental action in the US in these 4 years that he's been in office, he has elected 2 incompetent chiefs of the EPA. He has stated his declaration of intent to withdraw the US from the Paris Agreement, and he is actively opposing the Green New Deal, which is essential if we are going to fight climate change. So yes, that's my main message to you all. Go out and vote on Tuesday, November 3rd. Tell your parents to vote. Tell your friends to vote. Tell your aunts and uncles and teachers and everyone you know who can to vote, because our lives and the lives of all of humanity are on the line. Thanks. Do you have any questions?
What was Trump's reasons for backing out of the Paris Agreement? He just said I'll back out. He give like a reason?
I have not read about if he has stated any like actual reasons to withdraw the US from the Paris Agreement. My guess is that he's trying to appease and gain the support of the powerful coal, chemical, uranium, oil lobbyists in Capitol Hill to try to keep himself in office. But that's just my guess.
Wait, so he wants to gain support. Why would he want to gain support for those figures?
For re-election.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I put his official statement in the chat, so you can check that out if you want.
Ooh, thank you so
Oh,
much.
yeah.
Also, I just wanted to ask something about voting.
Mhm.
So, since it's most people, I think, are doing mail-in votes, or maybe that's encouraged, right?
Yeah.
So, since it takes like the time it takes to receive the vote, I think we should mention that you have to mail in your votes early, like err on voting early rather than closer to the election day or deadline.
Mhm. Yeah, if you want to give your ballot like 14 days padding, in order to make sure that your vote gets counted, you should mail in your vote on Tuesday, October 20th, which is the day after the last day to register to vote.